Hello, everyone. We're getting ready for Nice Love Applied. Can I do it? Our video club. This is Monday, July 8th. And we're getting ready to get started. We will be starting in about 3 minutes. So let me bring up our PowerPoint. Okay, we're ready to get started. And like I said before, good evening. This is Lace Love Applied Can Endure. We're a video club that talks about issues that have to do with love and us just diving into all kinds of things in our lifestyle and in our daily walk that have to do with love. This session, we're talking about the keys that unlock success. And so if you do want to write to me, you can do that. You can write me to Dr. C.V. White, LLC, the 150 Post Office Road, Waldorf, Maryland, 20604, or you can email me at drcvwhite@gmail.com. That's drcvwhite@gmail.com. Or visit my website at cvwhite.com. Also, if you wanted to support us, our Cash App is $DRCVY. We are not a nonprofit, but we are trying to reach the world with issues on love so that we can live together in more peaceably and just work things out together because we love one another much more than we ever did or understood that we should. So if you want to contribute and help us reach the world, remember I said we're not a nonprofit, but we do want to reach the world, and that does cost something. So if you want to participate, you can send a donation to our Cash App, DRCVY. All right, so we're talking about the keys that unlock success. And we talked about 12 of them. So we're going to talk about number 13 on tonight. We're going to talk about number 13. So let's get started with number 13. And if I can scroll down to that one. And there we are, just about there. All right, what's happening here? It's like I'm having some challenge getting number 13. And here we are at number 13. Number 13. Do not swear an oath at all. So we find that command in Matthew 5:33 through 37. Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made. But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your own head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything else comes from the evil. So we can see that there is a difference between swearing an oath and making a vow. So we're going to be exploring those. We're going to be exploring those as we go along, as we see what's happening here. As we see in this next slide at James 5:12, the King James Version says, but above all things, my brethren, swear not, neither by heaven, by the earth, neither by the other oath, but let your yea be yea, and your nay be nay, lest you fall into condemnation. Now, so let's look at the definition again between swearing. And swearing is omnyō, omnyō, to swear is the Greek word. It means to affirm, to promise, to threaten with an oath. And swearing, to call a person or a thing in witness, to invoke, swear by. So in other words, you're going to use, when you swear about something and make an oath, swearing about something, you're going to use someone or something else to confirm that you're able to do this, that you have the power to do this, and whether it is good or bad that you're swearing. I haven't heard much swearing now since I've been an adult, but when I was a child, I used to hear people swear all the time and promise all kinds of stuff, good and evil, to people, what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. And especially if they were borrowing money or something like that, they would swear that they're going to pay it. And of course, the person lending it may not even know whether they can pay it or not, but nevertheless, they were not supposed to do that. So what this says is that you are going to use someone else or something else as a witness that you have the power to do what you said you were going to do, and they're agreeing with you. So so you should not swear by God Should not swear by a person or anything to convince someone that you will keep your word. As an integrity issue. People who keep their word can be trusted. Trust is also an integrity issue. Always let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. If you're not able to say yes or no, then let the person know that you cannot commit to anything now. Keeping your word also means that you are dependable. This is a characteristic that promotes trust. Swearing an oath to convince someone that you will keep your word is an unsuccessful way to gain trust. So let's look at the meaning of vow again. And we saw what the meaning, the Greek meaning was of oath was, of swearing was a minute ago. So the Greek word for vow is naida, and it is a promise to God. Also, a thing promise. You can promise things, or you can promise yourself, but it is a vow. It is a vow that you take, and it's different from an oath and swearing of an oath. So let's look at scripture now that goes along with this. Let's look at scripture in Matthew 23:16 through 22 NIV. Woe to you, blind guides! You say, if anyone swears by the temple, it means nothing. But if anyone swears by the gold of the temple, it is bound by that oath. You blind fools, which is greater, the gold or the temple that makes the gold sacred? You also say, if anyone swears by the altar, it means nothing. But anyone who swears by the gift on the altar is bound by that oath. You blind men, which is greater, the gift or the altar that makes the gift sacred? Therefore, anyone swears by the altar swears by it and by everything on it. And anyone swears by the temple swears by it and by the one who dwells in it. Anyone who swears by heaven swears by God's throne and by the one who sits on it. So you know that's not going to work. That's not going to work, and because that is not how that is done. So we can't swear. We can't swear by an oath, any kind of any way, but we can make vows. And so we're going to take a look at some more scripture in regards to that, and see if we can figure out who these people are. In Matthew 26:74, it says, then began he to curse and swear, saying, I know not the man. And immediately the cock crew. And in Mark 14:71, King James Version, it says, but he began to curse and to swear, saying, I know not this man of whom you speak. And now who are we talking about? We're talking about Peter, who is talking about he didn't know Jesus. You know, Jesus told him before the cock crowed 3 times, before the cock crowed, he would deny him. And he is denying him. And not only is he denying him, he's swearing. He's swearing that he's telling the truth. Because he's not telling the truth. So he's using the swearing part to convince people. And that's what we're talking about. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. That's one of the things that God gave us, our will. And if we exercise our will, whether it's yes or no, it's going to happen. You don't need anything else to go along with that. I don't need anything else to go along with that. That's how that works. So now in Hebrews 6:13 and verse 16 as well, for when God made a promise to Abraham, because he could swear by no greater, he swore by himself. For men verily swear by the greater, and the oath for confirmation to them an end of all strife. So God was swearing to Abraham that he was going to keep his word. But he can swear to himself. He can swear to himself that he was going to keep his word. And he did, you know. Um, so that means that your yes or can be no greater than it is by adding anything to it. Hi, Ines. And so we're talking about key number 13. Do not swear an oath at all. Okay, so we talked about the fact that swearing means that you are going to use someone or something else to uh, convince somebody that you can actually do what you said you were going to do. But an oath is different. That is you giving something or even giving yourself, making a promise of that. So in our previous scriptures, we talked about you have to let your yes be yes and your no be no, and anything over and above that is condemnation. And I mentioned that I hadn't, as an adult, I haven't heard people swearing as much as they used to when I was a child. And people used to swear all the time. I swear that they were trying to convince people that they were going to pay them money back or whatever they were going to do. And we talked about that before you came on. But let me ask you, do you hear people swearing anymore?
Not as much, no.
No, I don't. But do you remember them doing it?
When I was at home and a youngster, yeah, they swear all the time. I swear, I swear by this and I swear by that. They don't do
Yeah,
it like we used to. I don't hear it that much at all.
yeah, I'm not hearing it now either, much at all. But when I was younger, I did hear a lot of it. And so if people are still doing it, it was wrong back then. And so what God gives us is a yes or a no. Your yes is supposed to be yes, and your no is supposed to be no. And our will cause those things to happen that we said yes to and no to. And so we're talking about people who can't say no and won't say no. Uh, and their yes doesn't mean anything either. When they say yes, it doesn't mean anything. And do you know people that still uh, telling you they're gonna do stuff that they never do? Inez, are people still doing that?
What was your question?
I said, do you think as many people are telling people they're going to do stuff that they never do, or making statements and promising to do stuff they never do, or saying they wouldn't?
Well, to me, I think it's more so now.
Yeah, I do too. And so we're talking about that because of that. Because we're trying to get people to understand your yes is yes and your no be no. If your no can never be no, your yes can never be yes. So you can't say no, then your yes is no good. So we know that because we've experienced it. But I put in here a blog by Cassandra Hawkins that was done February 17, 2023. And it's about keeping your word. And it's about honoring a commitment about keeping your word. And that's part of the problem why people want to swear, because they know they don't keep their word. And so they swear to convince people that they're going to do it this time, as if they have some power to do it. And so we talked about swearing is you using something or someone else to verify the fact that you can do what you said you were going to do. And we don't have any more power than God gave us. And that's dominion, and that's our will. And if we say yes, it's yes. And if we say no, it's no. So Dr. Hawkins talks about that a little bit. And we're going to go through what she did, and then we're going to go back to the difference between an oath, swearing an oath, and giving a vow. Because the vows are okay. So Dr. Hawkins says, keeping your word is crucial to maintaining strong relationships and earning the trust and respect of others. When you make a promise or commitment to someone, you put your reputation on the line. Failing to follow through on your word can lead to disappointment, distrust, and damage your credibility. In this blog post, we will explore the importance of keeping your word and providing tips on honoring your commitments. Why is keeping your word important? It's building trust. Building trust is one of the most important reasons to keep your word. When you follow through on your commitments, you demonstrate to others that you are reliable and trustworthy. This helps establish a strong foundation of healthy relationships, whether with friends, family members, or colleagues. And so if you are not a person that keeps your word, how do you handle a person that won't keep their word, Inez? How do you handle them?
Well, an incident. I've had a lot of incidents of people not keeping their word. I used to ride the bus with these twin girls, and they were disabled. So I had to go to the dentist. So I asked the young lady if she would meet them and ride with them. So when I got from the dentist, got to my job, the children wasn't there, and she was there though. And I said, "Well, what happened?" You know, and I was just, and I told her what I say to them. I'm very disappointed that you didn't keep your word and do what you were supposed to do. Now you made me look bad because I told them that you were going to ride the bus, or in any situation. I said, well, you said to me, and I related that to the person, whoever it is. So I've had occasion where I had to say that. So when that's a disappointment there, and it leaves a person not to trust you, or you cause me not to be trusted by just not keeping your word to me that you said. So yeah, I've had that happen.
Well, would you keep giving her that assignment?
No, I wouldn't give her that assignment anymore. So if I had to be off, I would tell the parents, and they would bring them, rather than just have someone get on the bus with them. Meeting the bus for someone to be there, and that person didn't show up. So they just bring them themselves. But that was very seldom. But that's how I handle it, and that's what they thought to handle it like that too from then on.
Yeah, and so you mark people, you let them be who they are, but you don't trust them anymore.
No,
because they have just ruined their opportunity to respect what you ask them to do. So that's the next two things that Dr. Hawkins talks about is respect for others. And she says keeping your word also shows respect for others. When you commit to someone, you tell them their needs are important to you. Failing to follow through on that commitment can be interpreted as lack of respect for the other person's time and priorities. And then personal integrity. So she says, finally, keeping your word is a reflection of your integrity. When you make a promise, you make a statement about your character. Following that promise is essential to maintaining your integrity and demonstrating your commitment to your values and your beliefs. So we pretty much put people in categories when they do stuff like that. And, I don't think they think much about it because they probably don't think that that's very important. But you put people in categories when they do stuff like that. And so Dr. Hawkins gives some tips for keeping your word. And these are very good ones to practice. Before making a promise, take your time to assess whether you can realistically follow through on it. Be honest with yourself and the other person about what you can and cannot do. If you're unsure, it's better to err on a caution to avoid committing something you can't keep. And so a lot of times, Inez, we're dealing with people who just can't say no. They know they can't do stuff, but they don't want people to think bad of them, and they don't think well of themselves. So they go ahead and say yes, knowing that they can't do it, knowing that they're not available, you know. And so sometimes people do it because they have other things going on in their life that they need deliverance from. You know, other times people do it because they don't think it's important and they just run right over it. But for the people who can't say no to anything, I think they have some challenges, and then we should be praying about them to be delivered and free from that, because that takes them down the wrong path. A lot of times when their heart is not in it that way, but you know they're tied down to something that's they went through as a child, or some kind of drama, a trauma that caused them to not to be able to say no to anything.
Mm.
Mhm. And so then the other part Dr. Hawkins is talking about is communicating clearly. And she says, when communicating, be clear about what you're promising to do and when you will do it. This will help manage expectations and ensure everyone is on the same page. If circumstances change and you can no longer meet your commitment, communicate that as soon as possible and work with the other person to find a solution. So that's a good thing to do. That's a good thing to do. And then she talks about prioritizing your commitments. Wow, now this is a big one, because a lot of people, Inez, schedule more things, more hours in a day than 24. You cannot schedule 36 hours in a 24-hour day. Something is not going to get done. Something is just not going to get done. And so you have to prioritize your commitments to really see if you could do that at that particular time that you said you were going to do it. Then a lot of people, they don't even think about the fact that if they promise to do something, it's going to take 3 or 4 hours, or it's going to take 30 minutes, or it's going to take 2 minutes, or it's going to take 2 days. And they promise it thinking that they can do that plus all the other stuff that they promised to do. So this is the person who promises everything, and they're trying to push 36 hours worth of themselves in a 24-hour day. So these are the ones that says yes to everything. So we talked a minute ago about the ones that say no to everything, but then we have people that say yes to everything. And they promise and promise and promise, and then they can't keep their promises. And so they're falling in the same category as the ones who say no to everything. That's why the scripture says, let your yes be yes and your no be no, and anything other than that is from the evil one. And so that's it. If you have too many commitments, it is important. And so Dr. Hawkins say, if you have too many commitments, it is important to prioritize them. Focus on the most important commitment and do your best to meet those first. Be honest with the other person. If you can't meet a commitment, and work with them to find a solution that will work for both of you. And that's what you're supposed to do. And then she says, the next one is be accountable. Be accountable. If you cannot meet a commitment, be accountable to take responsibility for the situation. Apologize for any inconvenience you may have caused and work with the other person to find a solution. Be accountable, and taking responsibility for your action can go a long ways in maintaining trust and respect. Okay, a lot of times when people don't keep their words, what do? Inez? They blame other people.
Yes, they do.
It's somebody else's fault. They will not take accountability for their own actions. It's somebody else's fault. So she says here in conclusion, keeping your word is vital to building trust. showing respect for others, and maintaining personal integrity. Following the tips outlined in this post, you can ensure you honor commitments and build strong, healthy relationships with others. Remember, your word is your bond, and keeping it can make all the difference in spiritual, personal, and professional life. So we want to make sure that we understand about keeping our word. And that's all we have to do. Let our yes be yes when we say we're going to do something, and then our no be no when we say we're not, and we can't. So let's take a look at the difference between swearing and vowing. Swearing an oath and vowing. You know, like you said, Inez, we don't see much of that swearing anymore, but we used to see a lot of it. So now we're going to go over these definitions again because we did this in the beginning. A vow, the Greek word is nadar, and it means to promise to God. Also, a thing promised, that's vowed. And to swear, the Greek is om-noo, to swear, to affirm, to promise, to threaten with an oath. So people threaten people with an oath, tell them what they're going to do against them. In swearing, to cause a person or thing as a witness to invoke the swear by. So when a person swear and they said, I swear by God, they used to say a lot of that. I remember they used to say a lot of that. That means that God is confirmed that I have the power to do this. And you can't do that. You can't do that to God's throne. He's not going to allow that. But we have to really understand what that is. And so that's the difference between a vow when you are promising to do something, which when you promise to do it and that becomes your yes, or you promise not to do it and that becomes your no, or just saying you have the power to do it and you just going to swear and you're just going to give them an oath that they're going to do it. The only one that can do that is God himself. That is a divine action that only God can do that. So we're looking at some vows here in scripture in Leviticus 7:16, where it says, and then we're talking about people that are vowing offerings, people that are vowing commitments, and people that are vowing themselves. But if the sacrifice of his offering be a vow or a voluntary offering, it shall be eaten the same day that he offered his sacrifice. And on tomorrow also the remainder of it shall be eaten. So that sacrifice could have been an offering. You know, whatever a vow sacrifice meant in Leviticus, whatever that meant, you know, whatever animal that meant, they could sacrifice that. And then once it was sacrificed and once it was offered to the Lord, then they could eat it. Leviticus 22:21, and whosoever offers a sacrifice of peace offering unto the Lord to accomplish his vow, or a free will offering, and beeves and sheep, it shall be perfect to be accepted. There should be no blemishes therein. Okay, so that means that it's got to follow the rules and regulations if they're going to offer. If they're going to offer something for a peace offering, or if they're going to offer something, a sacrifice to the Lord to accomplish a free will offering, then it's got to meet the standard. You can't just offer anything. You know, there's a standard for that, the same way it is for the sin offering. In Leviticus 27:2, it says, speaking to the children of Israel, say unto them, when a man shall make a single vow, the person shall be for the Lord by thy estimation. Okay, so people vowed themselves unto the Lord. And And sometimes it was divinely decided that they would be a vow. One of those vows was John the Baptist. And he made this vow right here. In Numbers 6:2, King James, it says, speaking to the children of Israel, and say to them, when either a man or a woman shall separate themselves to vow a vow of a Nazarite, to separate themselves unto the Lord. Now, we know that Samson was vowed as a Nazarite. We know that that happened for him. And we know that John the Baptist was one. Did you know that, Inez? You knew that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that was a vow, of vowing themselves. And then there was a process that they had to go through by if they were going to do that. And that was by not cutting their hair and all of the rules and regulations that went along with that. So that's perfectly permitted, because what you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to do this. Yes, that's a yes. That's a yes. And you can say a yes. I'm going to do this. And you can say yes. I'm going to do this. So then, when you say that, you have to keep your word and do it. Now that's the thing about it. You have to keep your word and do it. And I can imagine everybody didn't, but because of sin nature, I can imagine some people fell a little short. But the Bible doesn't talk about that, so we're not going to talk about it. In Genesis 28:20 through 22, King James, it talks about what Jacob did. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I can come again to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God, and this stone which I have set for a pillar shall be God's house, and of all thou shalt give me, I will surely give the tenth unto thee. Do you see this, Ernest? What he's telling the Lord what he's gonna do.
Yeah, I see that.
He's telling the Lord. He is telling the Lord. If he's gonna make a vow that if God do these things, he's gonna keep that vow. Wow, that's bold, isn't that bold? But
Yeah.
that was permitted. So in Genesis, now that was in chapter 28. So in Genesis 31, it says, I am the God of Bethel, 31:13. Now God is talking. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointed the pillar, and where thou vowest to vow unto me. Now rise, get thee out of this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. Wow. So now God is honoring his vow. He's sending him back home. And then in Numbers 21:2, where Israel talks, it says they vow a vow to the Lord and said if he would deliver these people into their hands, then they will utterly destroy their cities. So they're making a vow. So we see the vows are okay. And we're still talking about vows, but there are some conditions to vows. And so because of those conditions, we need to follow through and look at what those are. And they were found in the Old Testament, but they still apply to people who are under authority of their father or their husband. And so we want to take a look at that, because this is one of the reasons that Eve didn't sin. It was Adam. It was Adam that did it. When she bit the apple, nothing happened. I say apple, but the fruit. It wasn't an apple, it was fruit. But when he bit it, That was the sin card. Okay, so now let's listen to this carefully because this is very, very interesting here. In Numbers 30, 1 through 16 in NIV talks about vows. Now, Moses said unto the heads of the tribes of Israel, this is what the Lord commands. When a man makes a vow to the Lord or takes an oath to obligate himself by a pledge, he must not break his word, but must do everything he said. Now that's making your yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's making your yes, yes. But when a woman's still living in her father's house, makes a vow to the Lord or obligates herself by a pledge, and her father hears about her vow or pledge, but says nothing to her, then all her vows and every pledge by which she obligated herself will stand. But if her father forbids her, when he hears about it, none of her vows or pledges by which she obligated herself will stand, and the Lord will release her because her father has forbidden it. Now, she was under the spiritual authority of her father. That was the one that has to approve and release. The only way that she could do that is if she was taking care of herself, not single, not married. And so we're gonna get into that in a minute, Inez. And then it goes on to verse 6 to say, if she marries after she makes a vow. Now listen to this one. She's gonna make this vow and she's gonna marry after she makes a vow. After her lips utter a rash promise by which she obligates herself, and her husband hears about it, but says nothing to her, then her vows or the pledge by which she obligated herself will stand. But if her husband forbids her when he hears about it, he nullifies the vow and obligates her or the rash promises by which she obligates herself, and the Lord will release her. Wow. So even if she does this before she get married, when she married, if her husband hears about it, the first time he hears about it, if he says something against it, then the Lord will release her from it. She is not obligated to keep it because he is the spiritual authority over her life. And that is still true. Now it goes on in verse 9 to say, it goes on in verse 9 to say, any vow or obligation taken by a widow, that's a woman whose husband has died, or divorced woman will be binding on her. So that's how she gets to keep her vows on her own, is that she's a widow or she's divorced, and she can, and if she makes a vow, then she's responsible. But if a woman living with her husband makes a vow or obligates herself by a pledge under oath, then her husband hears about it, but says nothing to her and does not forbid her, then her vow or the pledge by which she obligated herself will stand. But if her husband nullifies them when he hears about them, then none of the vows or pledges that came from her lips will stand. Her husband has nullified them, and the Lord will release her. Her husband may confirm or nullify any vow she makes or any sworn pledge to deny herself. But if her husband says nothing to her about it from day to day after he hears about it, and then he confirms all of her vows or pledges binding on her, then after he confirms them by saying nothing to her when he heard about them. If, however, he nullifies them sometime after he hears about them, sometime later, he hear it again. He said nothing when he heard it the first time. Then he must bear the consequences of her wrongdoing. So he can only nullify it when he first hear it. If he doesn't say anything when he first hear it, then then she's obligated. He can't come by later and say something in it and God honor it. So these are the regulations that the Lord gave Moses concerning relationships between a man and his wife, and between a father and his young daughter still living in the house. So in Deuteronomy 12:11, in King James, it says, "So there shall be a place which the Lord your God shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. Thither you shall bring all I command you, and bring offerings, and your sacrifices, and your tithe, and your heave offerings, and your hand, and all your choice vows, which ye vow unto the Lord." So we see here from Deuteronomy 12 that God is allowing them to vow. He's allowing them to give physical vows. He's allowing them to vow of themselves. And so we see that that is working. Now, let's go back and look at some people who were doing this so that we can get some idea of some people who were doing this. And so I'm going to read it, Inez, and you tell me who the person was. "And she vowed a vow and said to the Lord of hosts, If thou wilt indeed look on my affliction of thine handmaid, and remember me, and not forget thy handmaid, but will give unto thine handmaid a man child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall be no razor come upon his head. And the man, Elegnon, and his house went up to offer unto the Lord the yearly sacrifice of his vow." Who gave that vow?
Hannah made that vow.
Yeah. And guess what? Her husband agreed.
Yes.
So he agreed to let the child go when she had it. But if he had said no, she wouldn't have been able to do that once he heard it. So that is an example of one of them. Okay, and now 2 Samuel 15:8. "But thy servant vowed a vow, and I abode in Geshur in Syria, saying, If the Lord shall bring me again indeed to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord." And Psalm 76:11, "Vow and pay unto the Lord your God, let all be round about him, bring presents unto him that ought to be feared." So this is a call to anybody who wants to make a vow with giving a gift or making a sacrifice. But now in Ecclesiastes, Solomon says something very, very clear here. Solomon says something. He says in Ecclesiastes 4:5, "When thou vowest a vow unto God, defer not to pay it, for he hath no pleasure in fools. Pay that which thou hast vowed. Better it is that thou should not vow than that thou shouldest vow and not pay." So that means that some people wasn't paying, doesn't it, Inez?
Yes.
Because you would have to say that if some people, if everybody was paying, you would have to make a statement like that. Some people are making vows and they're not paying them. And Solomon is saying here in Ecclesiastes, you better pay it, because you'll be a fool if you don't. So it's better for you not to make a vow than to not to pay one. So it's better for you not to say yes unless you mean yes, because you can't say no later. Wow. Okay, so let's look at some tips on saying yes and no. Do not tell people yes if you don't mean it. one of the problems that people have is just saying yes. And they don't mean it. They say what you think, what they think you want to hear. They just say what they think you want to hear at that particular time, and they don't care that they're not going to keep their word on that. They just are trying to accomplish something, and they need you to go along with it.
Mm-hmm.
So they just say yes, knowing they're not going to do it, and knowing that that'll probably keep you in tune with what they want to do. If you cannot tell a person no when you should or need to do that, your yes can never be yes. That means, Inez, that if you can't say no, then your yes, your yes, the yes that you would give would always be no.
Okay.
You know, if you're gonna say, if you have to always be telling people no, and they can't say no. You know, it's not like you're saying no all the time. That's not what I mean. I'm talking about people who can't say no.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't say no, then all of those yeses that you would have said are still no.
Mm-hmm.
So your yes can never be yes until you learn to say no. Okay. So do not tell people yes or no just to keep them quiet for the moment, knowing you're not going to make that yes or no good no matter what happens. That happens a lot in the workplace. It used to. I don't know if it does now or not. You know, when people are dealing with teams and team meetings, and people are trying to jockey for position and jockey for power. That happens sometimes when that happens. Do not trick people with a yes or no to bait them and then change it to what they did not agree to or what they did agree to. That's a bait and switch.
Yes.
That's a bait and switch. And you usually see that a lot in retail. And they promise you something, and you get there looking for that particular thing, and then they switch on you.
Mm-hmm.
Are they still doing that, Inez?
They're still doing it. Not as much, but it's still being done. I mean, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got wise to that, so it's not done as much.
Yeah. And so people do that too. You know, they promise you're going to one place, and then when time come to go, they say, well, you know, that was too busy. We're not going to that place. We're going to this place. Wait a minute. That's not what you said in the beginning. You know, and
Yeah, have that happen.
yeah. So do not say yes or no to an agreement unless that is what you want done, because you regret it later, because especially if it's a contract. Read it carefully and do not say yes or no until you read it and understand it. A lot of people get tied up because they won't read their contracts. And I'm not talking about one that has 30 pages of fine print, because nobody's going to read all that. They should, but they're not going to. But I'm talking about a 3 or 4 page contract. You can read that. You can read your cell phone contract. It's not that big, you know. You can read your cable company contract. You can read your internet contract to see what it is, that they are agreeing to or not agreeing to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so when people called up and complaining about the company did this, the company do that, and I asked them, what does the contract say? When I ain't read it, I said, well, I think it says, I said, well, go back and read it. Let's look at it, see what it says. And if it says that, you're not going to get out of it because you didn't read it, because you signed it. And then do not make promises that you're not able to keep, even if you want to do it. Some things you want to do, but you can't do. You want to do because you love people, you want to do because it's a family member, or you want to do because, it's a good idea, but then you can't do it. So don't make a promise just because you want to do it, knowing that you can't do it. And those are kind of things that help us, that our yes be yes and our no be no, by just practicing things that we just do without thinking about it, because they are detrimental to our integrity, they're detrimental to our trust and our character. If we just do things without thinking about them and thinking it's going to be okay and everybody's going to just let that ride, it's not going to happen like that. It is not going to happen like that. Okay, Inez, so I'm going to ask you to, if this has been helpful for your understanding why we should not do oaths and swearing, and vows are okay, but if you make one, you got to keep it.
Yes. That
Yeah.
one I understand, because I've been told that since I was a kid. My mom always said, let your yes be yes and your no be no, and your word is your bond. She said it all the time.
Yes.
And they said it at school too, so we were taught things. Like, it wasn't like we just was going along and nobody was saying anything. Like nowadays, people don't say a lot of stuff to kids, but they used to say stuff like, let your word be your, be yes or no, or let your word be your bond. If you say something, do it. You're not going to do it, don't say it.
Yeah.
We hear that, but as we grow up, then we do. Then I can just say that I have done everything. Like, say yes when I know, well, I'm gonna have to juggle this to get all this done. Like having too much to do because you say yes to 2 or 3 people, and So now I tell them, let me check my calendar. I've learned, but it's been years. I finally got to it where I said, I'm gonna check my calendar first, and I will get back to you. So rather than say, well, yes, I can do it, to look at my calendar, I have doctor's appointments and this and that going on the same day. So I try not to do that anymore, but I just check my calendar.
Yeah, and I have to do the same thing, Inez. That
Mhm.
just happened to me Saturday. My great grandson was having a little dinner for his birthday, it's 4th of July, and so they were going to have it on Saturday. But they told me they were going to have it, and I was thinking it might be a little difficult for me to get there, so I would not commit to coming, but I was going to try to make it. And I thought they said Sunday. So, and so I'm getting ready to call them to figure out what the address is to see if I can make it. And I wouldn't commit to doing it. And so they weren't expecting me. And because I didn't commit, I didn't cause any drama or trauma. But when I called to find out what it was, they said, we did that yesterday. Well, see, what if I had committed and was planning on coming on Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
And I would have disappointed because I wouldn't have been there.
Right.
Because I was
So
thinking
they
Sunday.
weren't disappointed?
No, because I told them I may not be able to make it. I said I probably won't make it, but if I can, I'll give you a call. And I
Oh.
did. So I called myself calling them yesterday morning before church, or right after church, rather, not morning, right after church. And they tell me, we did it yesterday. So, wow. Wow. So I kept my word and called, but I missed it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I missed it. So, do you have any other comments?
Well,
Any?
my great grand was doing a play, and she had put it out there. So there was a lot of stuff going on, so I missed it. And then I saw the pictures on the group, and I said, "When did this happen?" And she said, "Well, it went on the other day." I said, "Oh, I meant to come." She said, "Well, don't worry about it, because she's gonna have other things." I said, "Well,"
Wow.
I hadn't promised I would come, and I really didn't say anything when I saw it because I didn't know if I would be able to come. But my intention was to go, though, but I missed it altogether. So I said, "Well, thank goodness I didn't promise her that baby I would be there, because she'd be worrying them that where's grandma." She called me grandma, G-Mom. So that was that. And then it's a lot of times I've said things and then I have to juggle it around to get there, be a little late and all of that. So I had to stop doing that.
Yeah. And
That was
then
hard.
me
That's
too.
hard on you. It's hard on you. It's hard. Because then
Yeah.
your conscience is whipping you up then.
Mm-hmm.
If you have
Mm-hmm.
a conscience about it, that's whipping you up. If not, then it don't bother you to say, I'm going to do something, don't do it.
Yeah.
Because I know someone like that, they'll say that up to the last minute, and they say, well, you know what? I don't feel good, and that's always their excuse. They don't feel good, and they don't show up.
Mm-hmm.
They always want you to show up to their stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know, that's two different things, but anyway, that's just the way people are.
Yeah. But that's a part of what we're talking about. That's an integrity issue. If you always have, and we didn't discuss that, but if you always have a reason why you can't do something, you always have a no.
Mm-hmm.
You don't ever have a yes. Always have an excuse.
Yes, and always have an excuse that just don't show up, or well, that person always have, they will always say yes. Oh, I'll be glad to come. And you put them down, they're gonna be there, and they don't show up, don't call, don't anything. So
Mm-hmm.
this fits right in with what goes on in like a daily walk. Our daily walk in Christ, we have to be honest and above board, and that takes work. Some
Mm-hmm.
people don't think of it. They just say yes, yes, and they're not gonna plan to do it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're gonna do something. I used to tell my grandkids, now watch out, someone talking to you. They can tell you something and they walk 3 feet in front of you and turn around and you ask them about it and they pretend or they act like they didn't ever say it. I knew someone like that too. And they don't know what you're talking about. They look at you blank, like what are you talking about? So yeah, this is a good lesson. I hope a lot of people, all of them are good. This is great about saying yes. Let your yes be yes and your no be no.
Yes.
Because people need to know that, and children should learn that early.
Yes.
Early. You know, I don't know if they teach that in school now. I think it's a anything go now. You can say yes and go out the door, and your yes will become a no, or your no will become a yes. But it's too late then because you caused a problem. Those
Right.
kind of, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That is absolutely right. And so we have to teach them, Inez. You have to start saying, let your yes be yes and your no be no.
Yes.
And let
If you're
people
gonna
be
come
yeah,
over and do
yes.
something, then come over and do it. Don't just not do it, not call. Nobody know what happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Okay, well, that's it for tonight. If you don't have anything else to share,
No,
we'll
no.
say good night and I will see you next week.
Okay, then you have a great week.
You too. Good night.
Good night.